All right. We are back with another episode of A Pod Has No Name. With me today, as you could guess, Tom. What's happening, man?
Yes, twice in 1 week.
Yeah, we're getting crazy. We got a little crazy this week.
Double trouble.
Yeah, now we have a shorter reading this week, but, we still have a lot to talk about. We had a lot of great Reddit comments that we can discuss. We also are going to go over the epigraphs up until this point. We'll start off with some comments from the Reddit, go into the chapters that we read for this week, and then do the epigraphs at the end. I think we have a pretty jam-packed, action-packed episode here. But let's start off with a couple of the Reddit comments because we had a lot of really good ones this week, and I've said it, a million times. I'm going to say it again. Keep that coming. We love the interaction. We love, when you guys drive discussion, and I think it makes the podcast just that much better. When the listeners are involved. So the one comment I had was we were told to remember the interludes, Axes and Risen. I'm going to pronounce it as Risen for now.
Okay.
Because apparently they're going to come back in later. So I wanted to squeeze that one in there. But we also had a couple questions from Masir. I apologize if I pronounce your username wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But the first question, Tom, was, what are your thoughts on the convention of safe hands and men being illiterate? This was one of their favorite pieces of world building. So you want to start on what your thoughts are on that?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing that crossed my mind when it was kind of presented like this is, women can read and write in like full text where men kind of use the glyphs, and the thing they're using to write with is what they're protecting. And so Sanderson's kind of making a little bit of a like an analogy to, in my mind, it seems like, to like the power of reading and writing to kind of what is replacing kind of sexuality in our world, in kind of in like our past, and what has been protected in this sense of kind of morality by the system. They're trying to protect literacy here, mm-hmm. as in our society, it's kind of sexuality, which is kind of funny because Sanderson's a writer, so he's directly he's directly comparing sexuality to writing as a writer.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of I think Sanderson has done a good job with balancing like worldviews in the story. Like in this chapter, in the reading we did today, without getting too much into it until we get to that chapter, you had like brother Kabzal, giving his viewpoints on, religion, and then you had Jasnah kind of give her rebuttal. And I think he does a good job of, balancing the worldviews and giving like different viewpoints from different characters that are, unique. And, it's interesting. I would be curious to see, what Sanderson's, thoughts are on some of these, things. But, like you said, though, well, everything that you said I agree with, but I also just wanted to point out that it seems like that those like cultural things are considered like Vorinism. And we know that those kingdoms, now I Googled this, and I've stayed away from any spoilers on the internet, but I wanted to Google the name of the Vorin kingdoms, and I got Elithkar, Jakaved, Kharbranth, New Natanin, and Thelena. I think we haven't seen the latter too much yet. But what I'm curious about is outside of the Vorin kingdoms, I don't think we've learned too much about like their, cultural like idiosyncrasies, mm-hmm. and, the unique things that they have. I'm also curious about, I would love to see, maybe via flashback, or maybe it's even in another series, like what happened. You mentioned like protecting like the writing hand, and what happened in history or in their culture, years and years and years ago that like, really drove that home, is what I'm curious about.
Yeah, absolutely. Like what was the turning point to, treat literacy and the ability to read and write in this way? Is there had to be some sort of event or dark period where they had to they had to get to this place.
Yeah, especially with the Alethi, because we know how competitive, how that's like such a huge part for the men, that, them kind of being illiterate and it being more for women kind of makes sense, because imagining that the men were always involved in like war and competition, and you can kind of see how like those ideas will get molded a little bit over time. So, I think I definitely think it's interesting, and especially with the light eyes and dark eyes thing too, and just like you know, at the roll of a dice, what's going to be the thing that separates, humans apart. In Rashar, it's, the color of the eyes, obviously. So, just curious on like how these, like the backstory to these things. But yeah, I definitely think it's unique and interesting, and it allows Sanderson to do different things with his writing. Like in how, we've seen it, so far with the relationship between light eyes and dark eyes, but how different cultures can kind of, rise or fall, exclusive of their culture and more just on their eyes. It seems like to me, honestly. So that's what I think is really cool about it.
Definitely, definitely, and yeah, and that's part of the world building experience in general. While you're telling a linear story, you're also building out this world in parallel,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word there. I mean,
Yeah. Now, the second question that they posted was, what do you think is the relationship between Parshmen and the Parshendi? But I don't want to answer that yet, because I want to wait until we finish the chapters and do the epigraphs, because I have a lot of thoughts on that. And I just want to save that for towards the end when we, with the context of what we've read for this week.
okay,
So we'll get back to that one. Now, Sir Oshi sent a good, elaborate post on like currency and the spheres. Um, and yeah, definitely completely understand now that like the stormlight is the power. The stormlight comes from the high storms, and the gems simply contain that power. And still a little bit hazy, I think, on the gems still power like the shard plate, though. I think the shard plate, shard blade, I understand what they are, and like especially with Seth and the Stormlight, that was obviously something a little bit different.
mm-hmm.
I think I still would like to go back and maybe read and try to see if it's clearly spelled out on how the shard plate and blade are powered, though, if it's from the same type of thing.
Yeah. To me, it seems like gems are the gems are like what can capture the power, and then capture and transmit the power. Uh, the stormlight is the power itself, and then the shard plates and the shard blades and all the shard stuff is powered by the gems via
Yeah,
the
well, the
stormlight,
Soulcasters too.
and
He
the
told us.
soulcasters and the
Yeah.
fabrials and all that stuff.
Yeah. Now he mentioned in the comment there was talk of cracked gems in Ellikar's shard plate. Now I didn't realize, I thought that there was like stormlight in the armor, and that the armor
Mm-hmm.
kind of contained it at first. So now I'm realizing that it's the gems on the armor, maybe. Um Unless, Dalinor was described as being pretty plain, though. I wonder if he has like simple gems on his. Um so yeah, I think all of that's fascinating. I really, one of my favorite like details of the story so far has been the shard plate wearers, how they ornament it, like how
Mm-hmm.
they it seems like they kind of like add like their own like unique designs and stuff. Like Sadius, for example, has like a very intricate shard plate compared to Dalinor. So I think I just like the uniqueness that like people's armor is, unique to them, kind of. So I like that a lot.
Yeah, and so like part of like just while I've been reading this, like in my mind I've been thinking about like the adaptability to like a television series or to a
Hmm.
movie. um and the more and more we read of this story, I think the more and more challenging it is, just the costume design alone involved in, because these are definitely uh because they're powered by gems and they're covered in gems, these definitely be like pretty ornate costumes and pretty intense costume work by a designer.
Yeah. Now, what do you think about like an anime, like an
That
animated
seems
adaptation?
that seems more doable. Seems
Yeah.
definitely seems more doable, but who knows?
Yeah. It's an idea. I would certainly be open to it. Um, yeah.
Yeah,
Now,
I want. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, no, no. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I wonder how open like fans of the series are,
To that
and
versus live action.
and like just like people in general, like because that they've been spoiled by to some degree by Game of Thrones. We're getting a Lord of the Rings live action. We're getting a Wheel of Time live action.
Yeah.
I wonder how people like as material is less and less adaptable. Like whether people would be open to kind of adult focused animation.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, I don't want to speak on behalf of anybody else. This is just my opinion, but for me, I think as long as you get like the story and the details and right, and that you do right by the source material, um, I'm open to any type of adaptation. Now, I think there's probably some people that would agree with me, and some people that say, the story on this scale and how much work and detail is put into it by Sanderson, it deserves that live action adaptation. I certainly get that argument. Um, but we've seen how many times live action adaptations fall short just because it's an uphill battle, involving everything, including everything. So the number one thing I look for in adaptations is just doing right by the source material. So I would be open to anything. If you're listening, I would definitely want to hear from the fandom what your thoughts are on the adaptation. Animated versus live action. Um, Certainly a fun little mind game to play. And as we go through the book, I'm sure we'll have different scenes. We've already said it a couple times about seeing certain things on screen, how awesome it would be, right?
yeah, and whether you think adaptation is possible, and what are your some ideas to potentially, if you do think it's possible, what are ideas that you have to make it plausible?
Yeah, yeah. Let's all pretend like we're about to pitch this idea. How are we going to pitch it? Um,
And then Shane and I will steal all of your ideas and pretend we never
exactly.
asked you and present it to HBO.
Boom. Easy money. Now, the next comment we had one from Lessard, and he cleared up some, or they, I shouldn't assume gender, on high storms in the origin. Uh, so the origin, I understand now, is just east, and that's just the direction that the Parshendi were heading in. That they're just where they are on the map. They head east. So yeah, that makes a lot more sense now. And when it comes to Shinovar, we had a couple comments about Shinovar. I think Solus Kara had the one that I think spelled it out, maybe the clearest. Shinovar is much. We thought because the lack of Spren that it was kind of described as being, more barren. But going back on reread, yeah, it's more lush. And that because those mountains that shelter it from the high storms, I guess that's like the most nature, like wilderness nature that we'll see in the story, because the rest of it, and this kind of went right over my head as we were reading, is the rest of Rashar is like a barren, like stony wasteland, which is surprising. And I think the reason it slipped by us is because we've spent so much time in the Shattered Plains, and that's described that way, that I didn't realize that like Alethi or Elethkar and Jakaved were all similarly, geography similar.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting to. Well, yeah, first I missed that entire thing during the interlude, so thank you for pointing that out to us a few times there. But uh, yeah, interesting to think about how, like, I guess the origin is the point where the high storms occur, and the closer and closer you get to the origin, the less and less habitable it is, and then yeah, like the further and further away you get on the opposite end, like the more and more habitable it is. It's kind of an interesting geographic, explanation of their world. I wonder where the Shattered Plains is, like if you laid out the world flat, like a true flat Earth truther, how far the Shattered Plains are, and how desolate that is compared to like what is east of that towards the origin. Like how far along the desolation scale are we?
Yeah, no, I totally understand. And the Shattered Plains, if you look at it, like on the map in the book, if you look, Alethkar is, a little bit further to the east, and the Shattered Plains is like southeast of that. Um, and you'll see it in like a little corner of the map above the Frostlands. So Shinovar is all the way to the west, with like on the other side of like the continent with the mountains around it. Um, so yeah, the map is definitely making a lot more sense to me, especially with the help from those comments. Now, there was one question I had was, Solus Kara mentioned that, Shinovar has horses and chickens, and I guess more the type of animals that like we would recognize.
Mhm.
And, the reason that like plants and animals we've seen, like, things like the Chasm Fiend and, these other creatures that have kind of been described throughout the story have this, as they put it, hard outer shell. Does the cavalry that the Alethi army is using at the Shattered Plains, are those horses, or are they like a scaled four-legged animal? Is their like does their cavalry use horses or something else? I must have missed that if they said it.
Well, so I do remember when Dalinar had one of his spells that he basically like collapsed into the stable, and the stable was protected from the high storm. So it could be that they're regular horses and that they're just like the soldiers and bridgemen. They're kept inside and sheltered from the high storm.
Yeah, yeah, maybe.
Because I didn't pick up anything like, I mean, obviously could have missed things at this point, but I didn't pick up anything specifically
Yeah,
to mention
because
whether
when I
different.
because when I read that, I was thinking like in Lord of the Rings, how you have the warg riders, like the guys that those giant wolves, the wargs. I was thinking like, are we going to get like different types of cavalry units in this story that like ride different things? Because that would be really cool. So definitely something to keep an eye on, what type of mounts that these soldiers are using in different parts of Rishar here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, now Aragon the Huntsman, you had a lot of great comments. You made your comment is what made me Google the Varan kingdoms there. Now it says 4 Varan kingdoms. There was 5 of them. I think there's some context there that I'm missing. We'll figure it out as we go along here.
Yeah, we can't figure out everything immediately. Come on.
Yeah, come on. We're only on part 3, okay? Definitely something that we didn't overgloss it and just forget about it. That would never happen.
Working our way downtown.
Yeah, so I also wanted to shout out. Where are you here? Fixer 1987. Thank you so much for these images with the epigraphs. All listed on them. We're going to read them and go over them at the end of the episode. But yeah, thanks a ton for that. Really appreciate it. And to your comment about the wiki being dangerous in terms of spoilers, I've avoided it up until this point, and you just helped me continue avoiding it. So thank you for that. Now, shall we get into what we read this week?
We shall.
We shall. Okay, chapter 29, and we'll go back and do the epigraphs after we just talk about the content in the chapter with these. So, the beginning of chapter 29, I think, might have been, maybe not, but when I first read it, it just felt important to me. These men came to, Shallan's brothers, siblings,
Mhm.
and something about their father was involved with a plot for succession of Jacques Kaved, for the crown of Jacques Kaved. They implied that they knew he was dead, and that they wanted the soulcaster that broke, that she's trying to replace, was these men that came and spoke of this plot involving their father and succession. Now, what I wanted, the first thing that came to my mind was, in Seth's interlude, the king of Jacques was on that list that his new master gave him. And I was wondering, do we think that the guys that Shallan's brothers were just confronted by, is he related to Seth's new master as well? Did you think that when you were reading it at all?
So I did not pick up on that. It's good that
And it
you
could be
kind of,
nothing, but that's just a hunch I had.
yeah, that you picked up on that, the king of Jochebed being on the list. I thought it was interesting. It seems like Shallan's family is a little bit of a family of swindlers, and like they basically
Mm-hmm.
said, hey, like the father convinced everyone, hey, if you give me a soulcaster, and I'll work with Luesh, uh, you know, to work through this soulcaster. Like we'll work on this together, and then we'll basically, overthrow the king here. And he convinced these people, and it seems like there's a lot of people coming to collect a lot of debts of
Yeah,
different
yeah.
blood debts and money debts alike.
Shallan has, in these chapters, she kind of goes back and forth about what to do about stealing the Soulcaster.
Mm.
And, I wonder, a part of me wonders, because Shallan only needs the Soulcaster for the mineral deposits. Like, I wonder if Shallan were to, Jasnah is, a Lethkar, she's Jacques, but I wonder if you asked her, like, can you just, like, use that one time for a couple of mineral deposits, and then I won't need it anymore? Um, I just wonder if that would work. I wonder if stealing it is a little bit too much.
Yeah, I feel like they might be in too deep. They might be at the point where they have to steal it. They have to do this
Yeah,
repeatedly over a
yeah,
period of time to climb out of what they've built for themselves.
yeah. Now, as the chapter goes on, Shallan and Jasnah have a really interesting conversation about, like studies and different like worldly topics.
Mm-hmm.
And Jasnah makes Shallan study a lot of like recent history, particularly about, King Gavilar and his assassination. And, one thing that they say that I thought was important is that, like, none of the motives really make any sense from the Parshendi's perspective, which, obviously we talked about that, how the whole thing is kind of a mystery. I said from the beginning that something was off about the hit. But one thing I wanted to point out about this conversation is that Shallan is kind of a dick when talking about Yasna's father. Like, she knows that it's her father that was assassinated, but she talks pretty, aggressively about, like, how boring it is. Thought
Yeah,
that
I
was
mean, I think part of it was like, and it kind of gets to like the mystery around the death, but she was more like, okay, so part of it, yeah, pretty disrespectful to be like, yeah, the circumstances around your father's death are like pretty boring. Sorry, but I think she only thinks they're boring because the theories around them are so outlandish.
Yeah,
Um,
that there's nothing
and,
concrete there, like nothing that's actually worth studying.
right. And Yasna basically says like, oh, like these philosophers do this on purpose to like help us think and help us drive in directions where our mind wouldn't go. But because of where Shallan is, in her scholarly state and just being more of like a realist, she's just like, I don't know, this is all kind of bullshit. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, no, I get that. That's fair. That's fair, especially when she sees Yasna studying like older, more ancient history. I'm sure that like piques her interest and wants to be more involved with that. Now, there was one quote here by Yasna that I thought was like, if I had to pick one quote that Gandalf might have said, I think this is it. Humankind is noble when given the chance to be. I just liked that. I thought that was a good one.
Yeah, good one, good one.
Good little fantasy genre quote there.
And the
Now,
opposite is probably likely true, right?
it's
They
also,
can
yeah, I
be
mean, I'm sure you're right.
they can be evil when given the opportunity.
Yeah, if you give them chances to do anything, people will take the chance.
That's right.
Now, the king Taravangian, um, there's this interesting scene here where the king of Kharbranth, comes in. They sit down, and he's obviously interested in Jasnah's heresy and kind of just diving into that. Like, it seems like not believing in the Almighty. Religion, I guess, is just a very prominent part of life. So people who don't believe in their religion, I guess, is like it's super outlandish. But he's also interested in getting a picture drawn of him. So Shallan, draws the picture while like listening to the conversation, and is kind of just going off, just letting her muscle memory just kind of do the job. And she like this was like a little like horror element, to the story. I really, I'm very curious about this, and I want to hear more about it. But like these demons that she just drew in the picture, what do we think about that?
So I don't know if I'm being like overly perceptive or taking too much of a shot here, but I feel like we might get to a place where Shallan has the ability to either like predict the future using her drawing and like using this ability where she like kind of disassociates
Oh
from the
shit!
moment and just lets her hand take the wheel, or that she can like tell the nature of a person and tell the nature of a person's intentions
Oh,
when
that's
she
yeah.
like
I didn't
lets
even
her
think
like
about
mind
that.
run. And what you say? Sorry.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. I think that's a great little theory you have there.
Yeah, that's kind of where my mind went, like that she has some special power um with her drawing.
Yeah, I mean, the first questions that I had were, were they like demons? Were they voidbringers? Who are the figures following? Is it the king or is it Jasnah? Um, and then she mentioned that they had like for their heads they had like symbols or like impossible geometrical shapes.
Mhm.
My first thought is that Yaz or Shallan is going to see these shapes later in the story and recognize them, and she'll be like, "Oh, like this makes sense now." Um, or like I don't know, man. Like that now. What you said has my mind thinking a little bit that maybe, you know, she can kind of see things that other people can't with this like ability to just kind of like let her hand roll like what's in the room. Now I don't know if it I don't think that the king is like a bad person though, but I wonder if he's haunted by something. You know what I mean?
Mm. Interesting. Yeah, I feel like he. Hmm.
I mean, he
I
seems simple. Yasna kind of described him like reminding her of Dalinar, like old school. Um, you know, nothing like really crazy stands out about him, I guess. But she did say that they would be better off with more kings like him. So I can't. I don't want to say. I'll let you. But who knows if Yasna is wrong, right? Maybe
mhm.
maybe it's her. Maybe the reason that those demons were in the room were because of her.
Yeah, it did seem like Taravangian did want to use her soulcaster
Oh,
and,
okay.
and was looking to use her soulcaster. So maybe that's a part of it that he has intentions that were kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
unclear to her at this point. But I, in my opinion, like I think the demons and what she's drawing around are like evil spirits surrounding
Yeah.
the king himself.
Okay. Okay. I definitely agree with like evil spirit, maybe, somehow related to the Voidbringers. Um, but save that thought about the Soulcaster because I want to wait until we get the Father Capsule
Mm-hmm.
to bring up my point. But that was really it for chapter 29. Now, in chapter 30, we're back with Kaladin. And I thought Kaladin's chapters were fantastic, per usual.
Yeah.
Now, it turns out that Gaz is kind of a sympathetic character now, which pisses me off because I originally hated him, stated that I hated him. One of the commenters told me that it seemed that I would end up hating a lot more people. And now, I feel like Gaz is just, a very lowly soul who sees like shadows everywhere he turns. Poor guy.
Yeah, he's kind of caught. He's completely. So I don't think he's a good person. I
No, he's not
still
a
think
good person, but he's somewhat sympathetic, I think.
right where he's kind of caught. He's certainly caught between a rock and a hard place. Right where
Yeah.
if he helps or if he supports Kaladin and the bridge crews to stay alive, and that's like clear to the light eyes, especially Lamaril is superior, then like he'll get shit on and he might be sent to a bridge crew himself. But if he stops this like relationship with Kaladin, he won't have enough money to basically pay off his debts
Yeah.
to Lamaril. So he's kind of screwed himself.
Yeah, he's it'll be interesting to see how long Gaz continues to stay alive here because I can't imagine it's going to be forever, right? Um,
Yeah, he's kind of got that like he's definitely not like a good person, but like he's not a good person, but you see him at like the end of the bar by himself at like 1:30 in the morning on Friday, and you're like, oh, I can kind of see why you're like a shithead.
yeah, yeah, yes. There's some underlying issues that Gaz has for sure. Now, Larimel seems like a true shithead.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah, we can say that for sure. Now,
he's just full of himself.
yeah, totally, totally. Now, the majority of this chapter was Kaladin's like shield wall idea, which I thought was really cool. Now, like I imagine they carry it like so that they have their like imagine it you're the bridge on your like right arm on the side, your hand underneath it, and you just have it like resting on your shoulder or like along
Mm-hmm.
your arm. I think is how they were carrying it. Um, if that makes sense. I was trying to follow the description, but there was like it got a little bit confusing with the handles and the seeing out of it. It was a little bit confusing to follow, but I imagine that they carried it how you would carry like sheetrock, like just resting on your arm as you lean to the left a little bit.
Yeah, I
Um,
was thinking like a giant like canoe or something, or a giant
yeah,
like a hollowed out canoe, like how like 10, 15 people would carry this massive canoe. Or 30,
Yeah.
I guess. 30, 35 in this instance.
Yeah, and then later on, I mean, you see them use it, and it makes a little bit more sense. But also, before we get to that, Moshe, who was the one of the last guys to come around with Kaladin, he's made a sub commander. So good for Moshe, and he basically just tells Kaladin that he's just interested, curious. He doesn't actually trust him yet, but it's a start. We're getting there with Moshe.
Yeah, Kaladin basically was like, hey, look, I know you don't trust me at all. I kind of respect that because, I don't know. If you trusted me too quickly, you're kind of just a follower. You're obviously not a sheep, so I'm just going to make you the sub commander as a way to try to get you on board.
Yeah, you know how in Ted, when in the movie Ted with the bear, when he's talking to the store manager and he keeps like insulting him and his wife, and the guy's
Yeah,
like, "She's got a lot of initiative. I like you." And he
yeah,
keeps
yeah.
promoting him.
That's the
It reminded me of that a little bit.
that's the Mosh of this of Ted.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Now, so that was chapter 30. That was really the highlights I had there, and
Yeah,
then
that was a quick
31.
chapter.
What was that?
Quick chapter.
Yeah, quick chapter. 31 was a quick one as well with the flashback. It seems like Lyran's starting to drink now. He kind of realizes that with this new High Prince, his life has kind of been made a living hell. They don't get any donations anymore. Kaladin at this age, this was 6 years ago from the point we're at now, wasn't allowed to go to Kharbranth early. And the village just kind of hates them now because the High Prince basically told them to. And there's this moment where they knock on the door, and the village idiots are outside with like not pitchforks in their hand, but they have masks over their heads and stuff, and basically saying give us the gemstones. And Liren kind of like pulls them out and like pulls the sheet off and lets them, it exposes who they all are, like all his neighbors. And that's kind of how the chapter ends there. So, I wonder here, what I'm starting to wonder, does something happen to TN by one of the village guys? Like, does one of the village guys take their anger out on Liren, with Liren on TN, maybe? I don't know. It seems like something bad is going to happen that forces Kaladin to join the army, though, the way it's going.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting that like these people are just like, because this powerful guy is telling them to do it, they're just throwing it in the face of like this person who has spent their whole life helping him. And not only
Yeah,
does he help them, like he does all of this for donations and donations only,
he doesn't charge them.
and they rip that away from him as well. So he basically is having trouble like feeding and taking care of his family, and I just don't understand the
The
thought
reasoning, I guess. You
process,
mean?
like the thought process of these town people. I mean, you're just like, I don't know. I mean, I guess
Yeah, I
we
guess
see
it's
that
just
all the
because
time
it
where people
seems
are
like,
people can be convinced of anything and
yeah,
fight amongst themselves. But
I think too, just to talk about the setting and mentioning how men are illiterate. I think it's more so like because Liren and what he does, no like commoner person understands that or has ever really been exposed to that, like anatomy and knowing about the body and being able to cure wounds. Sometimes, but other times, the person dies. Like I can understand how Liren looks very mysterious to
like black
them,
magic.
especially if they don't have the education and who knows what the women think of them in the town. Um, but I can understand how Liren can kind of be a mysterious figure that they kind of look at speculatively. Now, to your point, though, I mean, he's been in this village for how long now? Like he said, like I operated on your kids. Like saved that guy's leg. Um,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it
like
is
I saved your
interesting.
fucking leg, bro. Like you wouldn't even
Yeah.
be standing here.
So
Ungrateful piece of shit.
yeah, exactly. I don't know. I hope. Well, we know something bad is probably going to happen. So no help in hoping, but it'd be interesting to
I
see
hope
how it plays out, though. You know what I mean?
I hope that it ends in a blaze of glory and Liren kills like 5 people.
Liren just like on the low is like a beast.
Yeah.
That would be incredible. That would be incredible. Now, chapter 32, we're back with Kaladin. And first of all, he gets to pick a new bridge crew member. And he picks the one-armed guy who just yells out his name. Which, Kaladin, I love Kaladin. Sometimes I think he just makes decisions without really actually thinking about what the hell is going on. Because I don't understand how this is actually a good idea. However, I like Lopen from the small bit that we've seen him. He seemed resourceful with getting, the water, for example.
Yeah, I don't think he really thought through the decision, but it actually like seems like it worked out. Like Lopen's a guy who's like more of a strategist, and because he only has one arm, has to basically, you know,
Yeah.
be constantly on his feet and thinking about how he can get the best of every situation. I
See,
think
that's what I was
Kaladin's
thinking.
he's just a champion of the underdog though. Like he's just
Yeah.
like, you know what, fuck it. Like I'll take in all like because like Bridge Crew 4 has literally become the island of misfit toys,
Yeah.
and he is embracing the identity here.
He also seems like an optimist, which I think helps Kaladin keep the men together because
Mm-hmm.
he's going to keep cracking jokes and just acting like nothing is wrong, which is great. Which is great. So I get that from that perspective, and the fact that he brought all that water back with the tarp, shows me that he's also a resourceful individual. So wouldn't be surprised if Lopen has a couple heroic moments or two.
Me either. Me either. I definitely like. I was like, what the fuck? Like, like, what are you doing? Like, just pick a strong guy. You just continue to fuck yourself over. Like, you already have like 5 less people than every other bridge crew, and now you're gonna pick a guy who can't even really participate.
Yeah,
But it does seem like he Kaladin sees the best in people. He's the Bill Belichick of the bridge crew, where
right.
he's not looking for what you can't do. He's looking for what you can do, and we'll see if that works out for him.
Yeah, definitely. Now, in terms of the tactic that, using this shield wall, like he runs in zigzags with it on the shoulder, so that when he turns left, everybody is behind the shield at that point. And when he turns right, they're exposed, but maybe they can run a little bit faster, kind of just zigzags his way there. And, he does this, and I thought it did a great job of kind of spelling out why this was disastrous. Because when he gets down, he puts his bridge down, they get back, but by doing that and taking all the heat off them, the arrows just went elsewhere and dropped, almost all the other bridge crews. Now the cavalry can't get across. Now the army can't get across to help the cavalry. And it ends up just being like a total disaster. And the chapter ends with, Bridge 4 lost no men in this bridge run, which is like miraculous, right? But it ends with him getting, Gaz and the hell was that guy's name? Just was looking at it. Liam? Not Liam,
Uh,
that's the dad.
uh,
Laramil. This bozo.
Laramil. Laramil.
Laramil comes up. Laramil and Gaz come up and, basically, I think he convinces them to not kill him, but they do beat him. And I, imagine he may or may not have a couple other punishments in store for him when we hear from Kaladin next.
Yeah, so this was interesting to me. So Kaladin had placing all this blame on himself for like not thinking in the greater perspective of battle strategy. But it's also like when you're in a bridge crew, like your only fucking job is to survive. So he's doing what he can do to save his bridge crew. I mean, I understand that he kind of fucked everyone else, but it's not like he's been given full command of all the bridge crews where you can employ this strategy universally.
Yeah.
So I don't really know what he could have done. Like he did the best by his bridge crew, but uh, you know, I, I mean, I get it from both sides,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, no, I
I
agree.
feel for the guy.
Especially, this dude didn't even know why they were going to the plateaus to begin with at first. Like, just him, being observing is what taught him that. So, these guys have no idea what they're actually doing. So, of course he's going to experiment a little bit without thinking about, what else is going to happen because he doesn't know the overall plan.
Yeah,
So, yeah, we're with you, Calvin. We understand. Now,
we're your friend.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Now, chapter 33, and that was the last time we saw Kaladin, but I did notice chapter 34 is a Kaladin chapter, so you'll have some good Kaladin reading for your vacay.
Okay, good.
Now, chapter 33 starts off with Shallan in like this big library, and it seems like Kharbranth keeps their treasury in the library with the gem hearts to light up the library. Really interesting, um, two birds, one stone type deal there. I am curious though, who gets access to the library if that's also where your treasury is, right? Like, there are some people not allowed in, you think?
Yeah,
The
I
only
mean,
way
I
you can
think
read, I guess.
I feel like that was like kind of I mean, I guess even libraries now are like that. Like, in fact, real life story here. I went to study in a library last week. I thought it was a public library. Showed in, and then they were like, "Hey, where's your student ID?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, "Oh, this is an NYU library." So, this can happen to the best of us, and I think there is a strong amount of security at the front door of
Yeah,
libraries every once in a
yeah.
while.
So you got kicked out of the library.
Not even kicked out, turned away at the door
Yeah, she didn't even get
from
in.
the. This is the second. Okay, now that we're on a tangent here, this is like the second time this type of thing has happened to me in the last couple of weeks. The first time I went to some college, Baruch College, if you're from New York or know the area, and they had a Barnes and Noble on campus, like one of the Barnes and Noble cafes. I was like, oh, that's a great place to study. So I'm in line. I already, obviously buy my coffee and snack or whatever. And then I'm like, as I'm getting getting everything, I'm like, oh, what's the Wi-Fi? And they're like, oh, the Wi-Fi is for students only.
Oh, oof.
Not even a paying customer can get the Wi-Fi. It's for students only.
Yeah.
So a real slap in the face for me and from the educational institutions of New York City at this point.
Well, we hope that you find a library that like suits your needs with Wi-Fi and just not turning you away at the door. Keep us updated. Keep us
I
updated on
will.
that.
I will. I will.
Yeah. Now, in Shallan's trip to the library, she found the book. I forget what it's called. I wrote down Shadows Remembered, but I'm going to be completely honest with everybody listening. I didn't go back in the pages to double check what the book was, but Jasnah was reading it, and then Shallan remembered the cover or the name of it on the binder. Um, Finds it in the library when she was supposed to be looking for another book, and just kind of skims through it a little bit. And they're all, short stories passed down from, tales of the days of the voidbringers. And like the one was about this kid that ran away from the voidbringers and he hid in a cave and he made a wooden figurine that looked human and tricked the voidbringers to eat that instead of him. So it clearly, like, tales that were passed down over time maybe have some truth in them, but it's clear, especially from the last Dalinor chapter we read when him and Jasnah had their correspondence, Jasnah is definitely interested in something to do with the Voidbringers and like the Heralds and, that whole, overarching kind of theme here that we saw a lot in Dalinor's chapters. And, I'm just dying to find out what Jasnah knows or what Jasnah's trying to know, because she seems like she is like the X factor, in my opinion. She has definitely some knowledge to this overall situation that we just don't know what she knows yet. And whether it's going to be Shallan or Dalinar or someone else who has the conversation with her to find out, I just can't wait. I can't wait for that to happen.
Yeah, I feel like that's what the epigraphs in part 3 are getting at. They're all kind of accounts of people dealing with the void bringers or some sort of mystic being. They're all just like different accounts and different explanations, and maybe this is the research that Jasnah's
Oh,
doing.
nice. I like
Yeah,
that.
that's what I've kind of picked up on. That she's kind of reading into this and trying to understand if there's going to be a reoccurrence of this.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes sense. Like with Dalinar, Dalinar kind of has the longest view in the room. He's not concerned about this petty Gemhard bullshit. He's kind of looking out to see if there's anything major coming on the horizon. And maybe Jasnah is doing that research for him, and we're seeing her notes kind of born out here as the epigraphs.
For sure. For sure. Now, after this, Shallan goes back. She finds, is it father capsule or brother capsule?
Brother.
Brother capsule. I wrote down father. Let me change that. Now, brother capsule is in the room, and he brought like muffins and jam or whatever the hell it is they eat, and wins Shallan over with the jam because she likes the jam, and definitely seems like he says it's trying to get her to like change her devotion, and like kind of like join his, group of monks or whatever, at the same time of trying to like convert Jasnah from her heresy. And even admits that it's like, he wants to be the one that like converts Jasnah. Um, a little bit, not selfish, but I guess for somebody that is a brother and like follows, the Almighty, I guess you shouldn't have like those personal aspirations, maybe. Um, but at the end there, when Jasnah comes in and kind of bitches him up with that line about, I don't understand what was going on with the cities and the symmetry. There was something happening there. Um, but she mentions to Shallan that like he's eventually going to ask her to steal the Soulcaster. And I thought it was interesting when you mentioned that the king maybe was, very curious about the Soulcaster as well. And I'm starting to wonder here if maybe like is Shallan in like is she secretly in like a nest of thieves that are all trying to get the Soulcaster from Jasnah?
I think, yeah. I mean, I think the Soulcaster seems like, I mean, but, you can create things out of
Not
or you can
or any.
manipulate things out of anything. It seems like an incredibly powerful tool, and something that uh, all parties, whether it's religious, kingdom, families trying to gain power. It seems like something that everybody would love to get their hands on. So yeah, I do think she's kind of in a cage here in Kharbranth, surrounded by people looking to manipulate her and get her
Yeah, the wolves are
Soulcaster.
about.
Yeah, there's
The wolves
there's
are
blood
about.
in the water.
Yeah, I like that one. Blood in the water.
Do you
Now,
did you get like a and this might just be me being a pervert as a person, but did you get like some vibes going on between Kobzol and Shallan here?
well, I think Shallan definitely likes Kapsel,
Okay.
but she knows that like seems like she kept reminding herself that like there's a bigger picture here. Now, whether Kapsel also has the vibes for Shallan, I couldn't pick up on that, or if he's trying more to if he's like more manipulative and he knows that Shallan is an easier fish to kind of hook than Jasnah. So definitely one way with Shallan. I don't know about the reverse way,
Okay.
if that makes.
Yeah, he seems like a little bit of a manipulative fuck.
Yeah, like he's like plays like the cool priest guy, but like on the low he might not be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not condemning Brother Cobsel yet, but I have a couple. Some warnings are starting to go off. I think
Okay. Okay.
now this whole this whole thing with him like doing the thing with the sand and the cities and the symmetry, and then thinking about how Jasnah is studying voidbringers and these things that are related to like radiance and heralds, and how she's a heretic, just started to make me think, do you think that Jasnah, she's staunchly like doesn't believe in the Almighty, doesn't believe in this religion, but do you think she's starting to believe? I would love to hear more, like her dive into that more. Like, does she believe that the Voidbringers once existed? Like, does she think that the books or the stories in that book that Shallan found and read, like, does she think that those are misinterpretations of real events, or if they are real events? Like, remember she sent the picture of the Chasm Fiend to Dalinar and told him that this is what people thought the Voidbringers looked like. Do you
Mhm.
think she believes in the Voidbringers, or just that people just, more or less just kind of, called Chasm Fiends that because that was like the story of, the big and bad monster, and that was the closest match.
So I
Um,
think I think she does believe, and I think it's like I feel like they mentioned this where it was the only reason that people identify them like as chasm fiends is because the worst thing that they can currently think of, and that there's this evil spirit that was around during these ancient wars in this deep past that no one can even remember and no one even recorded, and maybe that gets back into like we were talking about earlier why they protect where they give the women the ability to, as the
Mm,
people who aren't really battling, to literacy and the ability to read and write, and protect their safe hands and protect that, so they can
yeah.
remember history, which maybe was something that was lost in the
Oh, I like
past.
that a lot. That was a good one, Tom.
Thank you, thank you.
I think you just hit the nail on the head maybe with that. Now, there was one really interesting part here where she mentioned something about the city called Eurytheri, and Brother Cabsel responds by saying that Eurytheri is a fable. Now, right on the next page, you have the epigraph for chapter 24. Now, I'll just read this one now, but since we're only going up to 33, but it's I walked from Abba Mabar to Eurytheri, and it says that this quote is from the eighth parable of the Way of Kings, which is the book that Dalinar is reading. Seems to contradict Varala and Symbian, who both claimed the city was inaccessible by foot. Um, so it seems like a myth. Like, is Eurytheri like the Atlantis of Rashar? Maybe is it? How is it related to the heralds? I just had the thought to me now. Remember in Dalinor's flashback when that Radiant told him that if he wanted to join the Radiance, he should go to that city. Was that Eurytheri? I wish I would have remembered this before before we started recording.
Oh, I don't know. Let me see.
Yeah, I'll have
Where's
to
my
go
book?
back and check that out from that chapter with Dalinar. But it seems like this Eurytheri city has, something there. Especially, it would be cool, like, to find the lost city. Whether it's Shallan or Jasnah, or maybe even if it's in the Shattered Plains. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe like it's yeah. Well, they mentioned it's like heretical potentially to believe in this city, and that's why like they're shaking out the patterns of these sands and like the patterns of how these cities are built,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so it feels like maybe something that this the religion wants you to forget.
definitely, definitely. Now, that covers the chapters that we read for this week. I think there's, a lot of insightful things that we read. Definitely looking forward to getting into, what the hell is going to happen with Kaladin and Bridge 4 now. And also, it seems like the plots and schemers are, we're starting to cut the grass in Kharbranth, so to speak, and the snakes are coming out, I think. So it'll be interesting to see how those two storylines continue to develop. Any
Yeah,
closing thoughts on like the end of the story, or like what you think is going to happen next before we jump into the epigraphs?
I'm interested. Like, I feel like we're gonna have Shallan having this inner turmoil, and it's only gonna get worse between wanting to live this scholarly life and kind of return to her family. Maybe she'll come to a realization that her family and what she's left behind, because she kind of blames it on herself. Like, maybe she'll come to that realization that like they've been manipulative and they haven't been doing the right thing, and while she like still loves her family, that this is really the life that she should carve out for herself so she can move on.
Interesting.
So maybe she'll come to that. I'm interested. I'm really, really interested to see where we go with Kaladin. Obviously, he's got to live, but he's going to be pretty fucked up. I feel like the next time you see him.
Yeah, I agree. He's going to have he's been knocked down a couple steps of the ladder. He'll have to climb his way back up. It seems like. Now,
Yes,
all right. Shall we get into the epigraphs?
let's do it.
So, part one, the epigraphs, I have here from our good friend Fixer 1987 for part one. Now, these were, more or less like last word, maybe not all last words, but some last words of, I guess just all types of different people.
Mm-hmm.
The one that stands out the most is the end because it's a member of Bridge 4. And I forget if Gaddle was a guy that was mentioned on being on the bridge crew, ever named. Um, but yeah, I mean, they're all like pretty dramatic. And it seems like they kind of see things before death, right? Like the one guy says he sees a distant sun, dark and cold, shining in black sky. 10 people with shard blades of light standing before a wall of black, white, and red. Um, just some interesting descriptions here. Whether it's like people just seeing things before they die, like their mind kind of playing tricks on them, or what. But like these ones were definitely the most confusing to me, just because I think it's definitely hard to nail down any relevance. I don't know if you felt it compared to, at least three for sure.
Well,
Part
yeah,
three,
the
I mean.
first time I read through these, I had no idea, but now you kind of mentioning some of these things, I'm rereading through them, and you're right. It seems like everyone's kind of having some last gasp realization, and I think it's this, whether it's voidbringers or the heralds, or like the power um, the storm, the high storm. Like everyone's kind of seeing that some sort of higher being, or higher power, or higher plane of living, whether it's horrible or it's it's positive. Mostly horrible, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, you have things like, why have you forsaken us? And then at the end, the night of sorrows, the true desolation, the everstorm.
Mhm.
And then you have one where 3 of 16 ruled. That tells me 3 of 16 shard bearers, and now the broken one reigns. Broken one to me sounds like a villain. Maybe that's like a villain whose nickname is the Broken One. Um, I don't know. I definitely will save this. Like I sent you the link that Fixer commented. So I'm mostly just going to keep revisiting these like every few chapters that we read and see if anything sticks out to me more.
Yeah, and I think, like, yeah, it's hard to, when you're reading, like, just because of the density of the book, when you're reading these things at the beginning of the chapter, it's hard to, like, see them in the context of the other chapters in the same part. So it's nice to see them kind of broken out like this.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Now, part two's I think is really cool because it's
Mm-hmm.
all like one go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, now I need to read it more closely, but I think if I don't know if this is for sure, but I think a comment led me to believe that whatever is happening here is, I guess, an Easter egg from another one of Sanderson's work within like the overall expanded universe of
Mm-hmm.
not Rashar, but I think the Cosmere is what
Mm-hmm.
the expanded universe is called.
Yeah.
I I, I might be wrong about that, but I think it's like an Easter egg to a different story. I wonder what the relevance is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, let me reread it here.
Something
There
about
were some couple things that
somebody
I've
is
gleaned.
immortal now, which is interesting. I don't know if that is that like a herald maybe. I guess the heralds were maybe immortal to begin with. They always came back from the
Mhm.
desolation. It seemed like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, hopefully, it's something that becomes more and more obvious to us as we move forward, and
Yeah,
maybe we can come back and revisit. But beyond, like, exactly what I'm reading here, there's nothing that's jumping out to me
yeah.
as
I mean,
being glaringly obvious.
the only thing is the end. It's somebody asking their old friend who is now immortal for help with the coming war. Um,
Okay.
so I think we can, take that and kind of say that, whoever this person is, and this might be, more ancient. Like this, there's no telling when this conversation or when this letter is being written and taking
Hmm.
place.
Hmm.
But it's a call for help from somebody who used to be this person's old friend, now immortal. And yeah, I don't know. I guess there is some relevance maybe to the Voidbringers and the coming desolation, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it could tie into that, to this great war that's on the horizon.
Yeah, I mean, from part one and part two, what the epigraphs really tell me so far is that it's hinting at like the desolation, like something, like similar to how like Game of Thrones had the long night, like something very like what's the cataclysmic is coming, and
Hmm.
the epigraphs are kind of teasing that to us, um, as the characters that we're following here are slowly like uncovering the plot, right? But I think these epigraphs, I think for my personal opinion, from what I've read and thinking about it the past couple days, I think they're just teasing, that there's something like very big coming, in the next couple books here, like, regarding like the desolation and the Voidbringers, etc.
Yeah, I wonder if it'll set up, like, this book is going to give us context of the world, get us our characters in place, kind of set the chessboard, and then maybe the end or the last part of this book is where shit's really going to start to hit the fan, and then 2, 3, and 4 is where we kind of see
Yeah, well,
what the larger story is really about in this chronicle.
yeah, I'm curious to see how the POV translates from book to book. Do we keep like similar POVs? Um, so yeah. Now
Yeah.
I did want to mention, like, I don't know if you've ever read the back cover, but I read it when we first started, and I just read it again, earlier today when I was reading, and it mentions there are four POVs, right? You have the surgeon, forced to forsake healing and fight in the most brutal war of our time. That's Kaladin, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The assassin who weeps as he kills. That's Seth. The liar who wears her scholar's mantle over a thief's heart. That's Shallan. And the
Mm-hmm.
prince whose eyes open to the ancient past as his thirst for battle wanes. That's obviously Dalinar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now it says that one of them may redeem us. One of them will destroy us.
Mm.
Uh, so I think, in terms of who is going to be doing the redeeming and who is going to be doing the destroying, I think, it could be anybody at this point, except I don't think Kaladin would be doing the destroying. But everyone else, I feel like, is fair game.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think that at this point we're probably led to believe it's Seth,
That
but
does the destroying.
does the destroying. But that seems like the obvious choice. Maybe they're just doing that to lead us down that path. I also did see. I didn't read it because I didn't want to spoil anything for myself. But for our Stormlight, in our our Cosmere extended universe heads that have already read all these books so far. Somebody posted on like the subreddit fantasy about how the character of Dalinar like saved their life with their positivity. So if you have finished reading all the books, I don't know if that's spoiler free or not spoiler free yet. I maybe go check that out, and because it probably is something you appreciate, and then you can maybe let us know if that's something that we can
Oh,
check
we'll have
out
to
or we should
bookmark
hold
that
off
for after
on.
we read it.
What'd you
Yeah,
say?
we'll have to bookmark that and go back and read it. It sounds like a cool article. Or a
Yeah, yeah,
cool.
yeah, 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 yeah. It was just like, yeah. And then the other thing, like, I kind of really enjoyed the format this week of you guys providing us some like discussion points and some things to consider, and kind of jumping into that before we jump into the material of the book. And so we continue to love all your feedback. I know Shane's really done a better job of me of kind of responding to all your comments on the subreddit. And I do, I read all those and appreciate those as well. And I do love
Thing
integrating
is,
that into the Reddit
the
here.
thing is that Tom, when he gets kicked out of the library and they don't let him have the Wi-Fi because he's not a student, the whole getting online is is a problem for Tom here.
Yeah, it's a real fucking debacle.
Now, Tom, we got part 3 epigraphs left. You still ready to rock?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. So, chapter 29. The ones of ash and fire who killed like a swarm, relentless before the heralds. Noted in Masley, page 337, corroborated by Coldwin and Hasava. So, yeah, I mean, describing like an enemy, right? These ones are all describing some type of enemy, in my opinion. Relentless before the herald, so they were fighting the herald. So this to me is, maybe not a voidbringer, but some other type of enemy that comes with desolation, right?
Yeah, I mean, my mind immediately went to like, like I said kind of earlier, like this is all of Jasnah's research.
Yeah, yeah, and she's putting in these notes like, corroborated by this source and that source,
Mm-hmm.
where the source material is from. So I think that's quite cool. Now, chapter 30s was they were suddenly dangerous, like a calm day that became a tempest. This fragment is the origin of a Thalen proverb that was eventually reworked into a more common derivation. I believe it may be a reference to voidbringers. See something Emperor 4th chapter. Now, I was, to me, and this goes back to our submission question about the Parshendi and the Parshmen. I think the Parshmen are like the Chekhov's gun of the story. Like, eventually they're going to not be like a mute servitile species anymore. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't know what exactly that's going to look like. I just have that. I just can't help but think that. And I wonder, like, are they related to the Voidbringers or anything? Because they were suddenly dangerous, like a calm day that became a tempest. To me, I think that I thought of either the Parshmen or like the Voidbringers are like a rock who were like like a regular rock, and they kind of just come to life. So like they could maybe be like in the side of a mountain, or in the ground, and just like mindless right now for thousands of years, and nobody has noticed. And one day like they'll awaken. I don't know.
Hmm.
That's what I was thinking.
Interesting. So to the Parshendi Parshmen question, I feel like they're the same species, but one has been kind of, um, for lack of like a better word, like I guess like it's appropriate here, like indentured servitude, or like basically like domesticated by like the Alethi and like these more like powerful kingdoms, to serve and to live to serve, where the Parshendi are kind of the rebels who you know were never kind of brought into that fold, and still live to fight for the Parshendi lifestyle and species.
Yeah. Yeah, now the only thing though is that it seems like whenever we hear somebody comment on the Parshmen, it's that like it seems like they've always been this way. Like there has never been a time that people remember where the
Mm,
Parshmen weren't the way that they are. And you have the Parshendi who, they're growing armor on their skin, and they have, this insane leaping ability,
mm.
and they have shard plate and shard armor, where, I wonder if maybe like something happened on the Shattered Plains thousands and thousands of years ago, during that final desolation, that maybe some population of the Parshendi had like their soul robbed of them, maybe, and like they kind of, whatever happened to them made them that way, and that's why they are kind of docile,
Okay, okay.
or like they're like a sleep a sleeper agent of some kind, for the Voidbringers. It's one,
I
I don't
would
know.
like
That's,
that. I would like a sleeper agent.
yeah, sleeper agent I think has the best, like holy shit, what is happening chances of for like just chaos, right?
Yeah.
Now, where are we at? Chapter 32, or not? Yeah, the chapter 32 epigraph. Now, they lived high atop a place no man could reach, but all could visit. The tower city itself, crafted by the hands of no man, maybe by a soulcaster. But it says, through the song of last summer is a fanciful tale of romance from the 3rd century after the Recreants. It is likely a valid reference in this case. So, here's my first thoughts I had. By the hands of no man, that says soulcaster to me.
Okay.
My first thought was, like they lived high atop a place no man could reach, a tower city. Is that your theory, the fabled city that we heard mentioned?
Mm.
Now, the second thing I noticed, and this is probably, this is aluminum hat. When Kaladin was doing that bridge run, there was a plateau that was described as the tower, and I don't know, maybe there's a city on top of this plateau. Who knows? It just seems, you throw the word tower, you only see it a couple times. That's why it sticks out to me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. That's a good catch. Good catch. Again,
Now,
I'm
33. Do you have any thoughts
mhm.
on that one?
No. I'm
Right.
on board with that. Let's go to 33.
Now, 33. They changed even as we fought them, like shadows they were that can transform as the flame dances. Never underestimate them because of what you see first. Purports to be scrap collected from Talatin, a radiant of the Order of Stonewards. So this is how like it's thousands of years ago. The
Hmm.
source, Guvlo's Incarnate, is generally held as reliable, though this is from a copied fragment of a poem which has been lost. Now, this can't be the creatures from Dalinor's vision, because they were described more like the xenomorph from Alien, like all black, didn't transform or do any like flame dances.
Hmm.
So again, like, are they describing void bringers, or like some type of enemy that comes with the void bringers? Can they alter their stone body? Like, how like the transformer is like all metal and it can change from a car to a transformer?
Hmm.
Can the void bringers do that, but with rock? Kind of, I guess, is what I'm asking. I don't know. There's just with small phrases like this, I feel like I could come up with 30 different ridiculous theories, but the
Yeah, I feel
fun.
like I feel like this one is just like basically like there's I'm reading into it like there's nothing that we could do to stop them. Like whatever we were trying to do, they were countering it. They were
Oh, nice, nice.
transforming
You're
it.
taking it not literally.
They're just like an all powerful being that they're fighting in this great war.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one, because it was the Radiants fighting them. Like, this is from an account of a Radiant, so it would be desolation. You know, something to do with the desolation. So yeah.
Cool.
All right, now that we've done that, let's decide on what we're going to read for next week. Now, you're going to be on vacation until Sunday, so we'll probably record, maybe either Monday or Tuesday next week.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for that, though, let me see here. Let me open up to the table of contents.
So I don't know how much opportunity I'll have to read while I'm away, just because I'm going away with like 8 or 9 friends. So it's not going to be like a relaxing vacation, to say
maybe
the
like
least.
a Wednesday or Thursday recording then, so you can get
back. I was looking at 42. That's about 110 pages for us.
Okay.
Or 43 is about 130. So up to you either way.
Let's call it 42, just in case you're not able to get any done on the vacation. It's not like a chore for you to scramble 130 pages in a day or two.
Okay. So that leads us up.
Up to 2 and including 42.
2 and including 42, which leads us up to up and through page 746.
All right, we're really in the final frame here. The final there's like 5 parts of this book, isn't there?
No, part 3 is enormous. Like we have another, like it'll probably be this podcast, and then if we want to do a nice long read, it's like 140 pages until the end of part 3.
Oh, I see here. Yeah, we have part 4 and 5. Okay, cool. So, yeah, so up to and including chapter 42 for next week. I'll give an update on Twitter when exactly we'll be recording and when you can expect it. Be sure to follow us at a pod has no name on Twitter. We'll be posting this on the Reddit page as always. To anybody that commented last week, heard us talk about your comment this week, feel free to comment again, drive discussion, any user submitted questions. I'm sure maybe some things we said about the epigraphs will drive some discussion, or even our speculation, like with Jasnah and Brother Casbel and the Kharbranth King. A lot of things, a lot to talk about. Definitely a lot of theories and different plot and character arcs to kind of discuss. So feel free to comment, drive discussion that way. Otherwise, Tom, you have any closing thoughts?
I just hope I find a fucking library that'll let me in. Jesus Christ.
Well, everybody will keep you updated if Tom ever finds a library that they let him in.
It's really been a saga. It's almost like the heralds and the voidbringers don't want me to study for my GMAT. So
yeah, well, we wish you luck with that. Keep us updated. Well, I'll be asking for an update next week. Although with the vacation, you might not be doing much library time.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Well, this has been a pod has no name. On behalf of me and Tom, thank you for listening. We'll see you guys next week.
We love you.